I have never been so intimidated following a reader as I have. Wow. I need to take a deep breath here. Ho! Oh, dear. I'm pretty sure I know what you're thinking if you've read the title of this message. How did he so perfectly match the title of his message, his sermon, his homily, to the weather outside today? This title came a week ago, so I wasn't, in knowledge of what the weather was going to present. I'm also wanting to tell you that I walked from the Isabel Graham Center, where our offices are, and sometimes I come through the door into the social hall and make my way into the sanctuary, but today I thought it was rather important to walk from the Isabel Graham Center up the sidewalk and come in through the main entrance, in part because I wanted to make sure all the letters to your pastors' names were still on the board. And they are, which makes it feel kind of permanent. It's kind of permanent. Yeah. 45 years ago, exactly 45 years ago, I was handed a diploma from the seminary called New Brunswick Theological Seminary. And the diploma read in beautiful calligraphy style pen these words: Daniel Plasman, having completed the required course of study and having met satisfactorily all the requirements, is this day granted the degree Master of Divinity, and is entitled to all the rights, dignities, and privileges which pertain to that degree. I never knew there were rights and dignities and privileges. Master of Divinity. On some days I said, Master of Divinity. Some Sundays I thought of opening my gown, my pulpit gown, and say, Master of Divinity. Thank you very much. And I was pretty sure in the opening years of my ministry, if people just listened to my sermons carefully enough, they would know why I was endowed with a Master of Divinity. All that came crashing down during the first year when I was mastering the divinity, and I did my first funeral. Billy, 5-year-old, leukemia. The coffin was 52 inches long. And it was that day I realized my Master of Divinity was a little less important than I thought it was. As I look back, I have to admit, and I'll admit it openly to you, I think I failed. And my failure was not that of saying too little. It was a failure of saying too much. Thoughtless platitudes like, God never gives us more than we can bear. Yeah. Prayer changes things. Death is never the last word. Platitudes, flat platitudes, all of them. Billy's dad wanted to say a few words, so he stood in the pulpit, and he quickly got to the heart of the matter. He asked why God abandoned Billy. He asked why couldn't God have done something? And then he added, if Jesus could attend a stupid wedding party in Cana of Galilee and miraculously create wine from water, why couldn't he have done something really important and healed my 5-year-old? Some clergy perhaps display their degrees on office walls. Master of Divinity, Doctor of Divinity. I took mine down and I put it in the back drawer of my desk. I never took it out again. I'm not even sure I have it. I'm not even sure I'm ordained. Actually, I am ordained, yes. The first of Jesus' miracles, which Stan read so eloquently, water into wine. How about that? How about that? How about that? Water into wine. First miracle. First shot out of the bag. Water into wine. Crisis averted. The host, and no doubt the parents who foot the bill, are inevitably embarrassed. Wedding guests need to drink their fill. I've been clergy at many of those festivities when the wine really flows. I don't really care that most scholars refer to this as Jesus' first miracle. I am, and I'll be honest with you, I'm probably 95% sure that I don't believe in miracles that suspend the laws of nature. What I find more intriguing is that the gospel writer does not call this a miracle. The gospel writer calls it a sign. A sign. One of the first of Jesus' signs. Now, that sort of pushes the pinball wizard buttons in me. It's a sign of what? It's a sign of abundance, extravagance, muchness. I like it when I read numbers in the Bible. So you have 6 stone water jars, 30 gallons capacity in each jar, 180 gallons of water turned supposedly into wine. I did some further calculations. That's over 3,000 6-ounce glasses of Finn Valley's finest. That's a massive amount. Now, Jody and I have been to some of your parties, and, they've been pretty good and plentiful, and some of them have been over the top, but nothing like this. Is it a miracle? I don't care. It's a story. And as we all know, stories don't have to be true and factual to be applicable to our lives. It's a sign says the writer of John. It's a marker, it's a pointer to God's lavish abundance, distributed by faithful servants and compassionate people, and who give out bandages and medicine and blankets and food and 2x4s and concrete shouldering. People who give out of their abundance to meet human need. Jimmy Carter did that. MLK did that. I've done a lot of reading about Martin Luther King over the decades. I took several courses on him. And I know this about him: he didn't exalt his prayer life publicly. And he often exposed his questions related to God. Except on one occasion, and it was during the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. Rosa Parks had been hauled by the police and was in jail at the time. King soon thereafter was thrust into this newfound leadership position that he wasn't even really looking for. And then the death threats and the phone calls started coming. Leave Montgomery now if you don't wish to die. King was exhausted, frightened, obviously, trembling. And he writes in his book, Stride Toward Freedom, he said, I poured myself a cup of coffee. I sat in a chair in my kitchen, and here's what he wrote. I was ready to give up, my courage all but gone. I bowed at the kitchen table and prayed aloud. I am at the end of my powers. I have nothing left. I have come to the point where I cannot face it alone. And then he writes this. I heard a quiet assurance of an inner voice saying, stand up for justice, stand up for truth, and God will be on your side forever. And almost at once, my fears began to go. 3 days later, a bomb blasted through his house. He and his family escaped unharmed by a hair's breadth. The news of the bombing drew a supportive crowd. Within an hour, several hours, the crowd grew, and they shouted for vengeance upon the white perpetrators. King came outside, he stood on his broken front porch, and he raised his arms and said, we must meet hate with love. He understood that. Deep within his bones, he understood that. We must meet hate with love. So muchness. I don't need a God who performs magic tricks in Las Vegas. I leave that to Penn and Teller. I'm in the hunt for a God disguised in people, of muchness, who seek to sort out the real from the unreal. I'm not looking for a God in the clouds that will remove every earthly obstacle in life. I need a God disguised as people, of muchness, who walk together through the valleys of the shadows of death. I'm not looking for a God residing in some heavenly abode who reminds me of the worst things I've done in my life, and there are a few. I need a God disguised as people, of muchness, who remind each other that we are not the sum total of our failings. I'm not in the market for a God in heaven who threatens with hell, fire, and white-hot coals beneath my feet. I need a God disguised as people of muchness, who are committed, deeply so, to removing the hellish circumstances that people far and even in our own zip code need attention. I need a God disguised as people of so much muchness who are determined to roll up their shirt sleeves and to roll up the cuffs of their blue jeans and enhance lives rather than cast blame. That's the kind of God living in people that I need. And it's right here. And I'm looking at it right now. That's how I see God in you. A muchness of caring, a muchness of empathy, a muchness of mutual support, a muchness of lifting each other up and finding others to lift up. We just have to figure out the best delivery systems, right? And frankly, let's face it, we should throw a lot of parties in the process. Tomorrow, for some people, is Coronation Day. I won't be tuning in. I'm going to begin instead a daily ritual tomorrow that I hope I can extend for the next 4 years. I'm going to pray a prayer attributed to the 13th century ragamuffin saint called Francis of Assisi. Perhaps there might be room to regularly incorporate his prayer throughout our worship services in the immediate years to come. Here's what I'm going to pray every day. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. So muchness in that prayer and in this room. Now, I realize if you're not quite ready to believe all this, then all this talk about so much muchness, consider something more mundane. Like there are 3,000 registered varieties of tulips. How about that? I can get into that. Who knew? And now you can spread the word. A bit more seriously, I end with this quote from Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. If you don't find God in the next person you meet, you'll never find God anywhere. So much muchness. It's nice to be one of your pastors. I invite you to pause for a moment and, whether eyes open or closed, just reflect a bit on anything that you heard and bring it in the realm of muchness.